Hello YouTube and welcome to Theater Talk. I know it's been a while since I made a video. I'm gonna be making an update video soon, probably just sitting and talking kind of like this, talking about what's been going on in my life. But my friend Bailey won the lottery to go see Funny Girl yesterday and he asked me if I wanted to go with him, so I did and I'm gonna talk about it. If you're new here, hello, my name is Tori Cyclic. Welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do, go ahead and give it a like down below and subscribe while you're down there as well. You can also follow me on Instagram and TikTok at tss6295. Now, let's get into the video. So as the world knows and the internet knows, there was a lot of drama surrounding Funny Girl in every single aspect of the show. When it was initially announced, when the whole recasting situation just happened, and now everything that's going to be happening with the new cast that's coming in. When my friend Bailey asked me if I wanted to go see Funny Girl, I was kind of like, well, I don't really know what to expect from the show. I've heard some good reviews of it, some bad reviews of it, some like in the middle reviews of it, but I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go in with an open mind. I also don't really know Funny Girl that much. Like, I know I should, as a Jewish person, I should know Funny Girl pretty well, but I just don't really know it except from like the bits of it that were on Glee, the songs that were on Glee, and watching Barbra Streisand sing Don't Rain on My Parade. Obviously just knowing that it's the story of Fanny Brice, but other than that, not much of the specifics, not much of the songs except for the big ones. And honestly, I loved it. I was surprised by how much I loved it, but that really has to do with Julie Benko, who's starring currently as Fanny Brice. Julie Benko is incredible in this show. I've never seen her in anything else. I see her pop on my TikTok feed, but other than that, I don't really know much about her at all. But she is so good in this role. It feels like it was made for her completely, because she just really embodies Fanny Brice, a Jewish woman living in New York, a Jewish woman chasing her dreams, having a career, all that kind of stuff. She just embodies that part of the character really well, and also has such an incredible voice that like has so much variety to it. I was just sitting in the audience very, very impressed. Like, the first thing she did, I was like, I'm hooked in. I'm ready to watch. Julie Benko is also just very naturally funny. I feel like she understands the comic timing of Fanny Brice really well, and she bounces off the other characters and the other actors really, really well to show how Fanny is different and is a funny girl. Her voice is just amazing. There's so many different layers to it, and she uses that really effectively. There's a lot of different ways that she's using her voice in some of the bigger numbers, especially when she's playing the younger version of Fanny in the first act. She's using a lot more of mixing and a bit of belting, but it's a lot more higher place. But when she's a bit older in the second act, she's using more of the softer side of her voice, more of her head voice. And I just felt like that was such a great way to show the differentiation of the character as she grows up, but also just to show the variety of the different songs. I'm the Greatest Star, Cornet Man, and Don't Rain on My Parade were very much living in that mixy, belty kind of world, but felt very light and not too heavy where belting can feel sometimes. And then the songs People and The Music That Makes Me Dance were much more in a head voice place, because they are softer moments in the show. They're not as brassy and bold as all those other ones, and they show the variety of Fanny's character, what she's going through in her journey. And I feel like Julie just played that so well, of showing the variety that Fanny has as a person and as a character, and her growth throughout the entire show. She also had some really fun mannerisms and adding in her speaking voice while she was singing. It felt like she was kind of like accenting a phrase by speaking it. It didn't feel like it was like, oh, I have to speak this line because it's written that way. It felt very natural. I also really love that Julie Benko is a Jewish woman playing a Jewish role on Broadway, because a lot of times in media, TV, film, Broadway, Jewish actors and Jewish people are not really given the opportunities to play Jewish roles because of what's available, or typecasting, or just choosing people that don't have that lived experience. And I feel like that just made it feel more authentic. Like when Julie is saying Yiddish words throughout the script, it didn't feel like she was like, I don't know how to say this word because it's in a different language that I don't know. It felt like she says it in her everyday life, and everything that like was very Jewish about the character, I was like, I believe that. As somebody who's Jewish, I was like, I buy this, and this feels very real. She also handled the emotional shift in the second act so well. I felt like I literally watched her grow up. It felt like she looked older and had a different presence in the second act than the first act. Jared Grimes, who plays Eddie, is amazing. He's an incredible tapper. I'd only really heard of him from his tap dancing before the show, but getting to see it live in person was incredible. He is so good. He just does fast taps so well and has this like hoofing style that is really intricate and really fun to watch. As an actor, he is very strong in the role. He does kind of play like the straight man character to Fanny, but does have a lot of funny moments that go alongside her, as well as with Mrs. Brice. And I feel like he did that really well, as well as also handling the emotional shifts throughout the show so well. But I just really enjoyed watching him on stage. It felt very welcoming and very fun. There's a number that's in the beginning of the show that's like Fanny's first performance this with Keeney's Theater, and Jared Grimes did a whole tap number at the beginning of it, and I was just like, I can't look away from this because it's so good. He was adding in a lot of ad-libs while he was dancing, and I just really loved that because it felt very, again, natural. It felt like it wasn't like I have to say this ad lib here. It felt like, okay, the audience is reacting a certain way to my dancing. I'm going to say something in reaction to that. Mrs. Bryce, who's played by Liz McCartney, who is the current standby for the role, she was fantastic. I really loved her in this role. I've never seen her in anything that I can think of at the moment, but I really enjoyed her. I thought that she was a lot of fun. She brought a lot of power and gravitas to the role, and it made the connections with Fanny feel very realistic and very strong and powerful, but not overpowering. It felt like a strong, confident woman. I also really liked her with the actresses who played Mrs. Meeker and Mrs. Straykovich, because they kind of felt like the three Yentas down the street, like talking about everything that's happening in the neighborhood. Ramin Karimloo is Nick Arnstein, and he's just so smooth and dapper on stage. I've never seen him live anything. I've just mostly seen him in videos of Phantom and I think Chess, and I kind of knew his voice. And at first I was like, I don't know how I totally feel about his voice in the realm of the show. It felt a bit more contemporary rather than kind of the older style of the show. But once he got into the second act of it, I did enjoy how his voice sounded more. There were more songs for him to be singing that felt a lot more powerful. He has a song in the second act where he also had a whole dance break in there. I didn't know he could dance. He kept up really well with the ensemble guys who were like turning and spinning and jumping like crazy, and he was doing his like single turns and little bits along with them. But I was very impressed by it. I was like, I had no idea he could do that, and he was great in that. He had a really strong presence on stage. He also had some very funny moments too. There's a moment in You Are Woman where he like falls off the chaise lounge that they're using throughout the scene and then just hops right back on top of it and just like hits a pose. And I just thought that was such good comic timing for an actor who I feel like doesn't always get funny roles. He does a lot more like serious, strong men on stage. And it was really fun to see him be very playful on stage. It felt like something kind of different that I feel like if I'd seen him in other shows, I'd be like, oh, this is a new side of Ramin that I've never seen before. The show was really funny. I didn't expect it to be as funny as it was, but I thought it was hilarious, and I was laughing throughout the entire thing, which I was like kind of surprised by. Lots of good Jewish jokes in there, lots of good Jewish references as well, which I really appreciated. I feel like there were certain jokes that were going over people in the audience's heads that I was like laughing out loud about, and I was like, oh, they might not get it because they're not Jewish, but I was like, I really appreciated it. I also really love that Funny Girl feels like a kind of more modern representation of Jews on stage, because the only other ones that I can really think of are Fiddler on the Roof and Falsettos. Falsettos is a very specific representation of Jews on stage. Also 13 a little bit too, but it's more focused on like the kids. And then Fiddler on the Roof is obviously set in a very long time ago. Funny Girl is also set in the early 1900s, but the way that this production was directed, it did feel pretty modern how Fanny was on stage as a Jewish woman. Obviously there's bits of the Jewish culture that aren't as modern because it is set in a specific time period and it is a period piece, but for a period piece, it did feel a lot like modern Judaism in New York, which I was kind of like, oh, that's something I didn't expect either from the show, and I like that. Dance-wise in the show, I like the tap dancing a lot. I felt like it was very impressive because it's a kind of style of hoofing tap that hasn't really been on stage in a very long time, but the other dancing, I didn't really like. I was kind of like, it's fine. It's showgirls dancing and posing, but like there was nothing that really stuck out as like, oh my God, this is the most amazing dance choreography I've ever seen. In that same kind of vein, I felt like the ensemble was fine, but they didn't really like blow me away. They did have a lot of really great standout and featured moments. I feel like almost every ensemble member had either a character that they would come out at a certain point and have some lines and then go back into the ensemble, which I thought was nice to have, that everybody had a feature. But other than that, they didn't really impressed me that much, which I was kind of like, oh God, I wanted more from them. And specifically, there was one ensemble member in the second act tap number who came out, did like, it was like two boys doing a tap bit, and he was just straight-faced, not smiling the entire time, and then the rest of the ensemble comes out and they're all smiling and singing along, and I was like, why is this guy so serious on stage? I don't understand. It's a tap dance number in a big old musical. The set was fine. Again, not super impressive to me in the way that I thought it would be of like big flying sets. It was mostly like a set of mirrors that would rotate and open, and like they also had brick walls on the other side of them, and then like some standing set pieces that were on the side, and then a curtain that would come in and out, and a scrim that would come in and out. I really liked the rotating mirrors when Fanny was on stage. I feel like it was used very well for Don't Rain on My Parade and the Don't Rain on My Parade reprise at the end of the show, because it just made the stage feel very big for her because it's her alone on the stage, but it's just mirrors behind her. And the costumes were fine also. Again, I feel like the best costumes were for Fanny because they really did help to show her progression from teenager to however old she is at the end of the show. I think she's maybe like mid 30s or 40s, but it was used really well to show her progression of age, that everything in the first act, she had long hair as for a wig and was dressed in a lot more younger style clothing. And then as she gets older, by the end of the first act, she has her hair short and up, which shows that she's getting older and growing. And then the whole second act, her hair is up more in like a shorter style. And then her clothing is a lot more grown up. There's like looser kind of things. It's not as much tight dresses. It's more like looser flowing outfits, which I like that it showed the character progression as she got older. But otherwise for the ensemble, they were fine. Again, I was kind of like, I wanted a little bit more out of the costumes for the ensemble and for the other characters in the show. I'd like Eddie had like the same kind of like vest pants outfit throughout the entire show that kind of was in like an orange theme color scheme, but nothing else really changed from it. And then Nikki was always in a suit. I wanted a little bit of something different for all of the characters so they could have some variety in the same way that Fanny does. She has a costume change almost every scene. But overall, I really enjoyed the show. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed the show. Those are my thoughts on Funny Girl. If you've seen the show, let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. And what do you think about all the drama that's happened behind the show? Because that is a whole other beast. And yeah, and it's been a very interesting situation to watch unfold. Thank you so much for watching DFTBA, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.